Hi, welcome to the Hybrid Fitness Summit SkiErg component. My name's James Hall. I'm the world record holder for the 1,000 meter SkiErg, the 2,000 meter SkiErg, and the 1,000 meter RowErg. Now, to get those world records, I spent thousands and thousands and thousands of hours perfecting my technique to become highly efficient, to be able to hold a certain pace for a prolonged period of time, to make sure I could stand out above everyone else. So on that journey, I came up with the most effective technique to sustain that will allow you not to burn out and to perform at your best. Now, we're going to look at this in terms of a Hyrox race, everything from drag factor, stroke rate, technique, and how you can perform better on event one of Hyrox. So the first thing we're going to look at when we consider the SkiErg is actually how the machine measures power and what it is measuring. So the SkiErg, ultimately, you are catching resistance via a fan. The cords go up through a pulley system and you are leveraging through the fan with these handles. So when we look at the force curve, we can see that the force comes on very early in the stroke and it tails off gradually. So therefore, we want to be hitting the most optimal part of this more often than the non-optimal parts. So if I just shoot straight forward and describe the technique and how it relates to this force curve, is that I quickly get onto the max force, and I do that not from the top, but where my hips are broken, so I'm already losing quite a bit of the length. If I tried to catch the resistance up the top and all the way down to the bottom, that would mean that I can't get that true max power that I'm looking for. So when we look at the force curve, it comes on quickly when our hips are broken, okay? So a bit like a seatbelt. We're going to catch the resistance, and very quickly, when we get our weight into the cord, we're going to be at peak resistance, okay? So if I started all the way up here, I wouldn't be able to get that quick transfer of power into the fan, okay? It's going to be a lot more gradual. And also, as you can see, the force curve tails off towards the end, so we don't want to actually spend too much time in the bottom. So we're actually only spending around this much time on the cords, okay? If we spend a lot of time on the resistance up here and down here, we are going to be negatively affecting the equation of force and how often we hit it. Now, not only is that inefficient, we're not going to get a good reading on the monitor, it's also going to cost us a lot of fatigue because we are under unnecessary stress trying to find extra resistance when we're not going to get it optimally. Okay, so for example, if I stay with the cord all the way down, so this is where I would normally stop and recover and let the fan carry on. If I stay with the cord all the way to the bottom, I'm just under excessive amounts of stress. Now, in terms of Hyrox, that means that your quads are going to blow up. It's going to negatively affect your next run. It's going to negatively affect your sleds, and it will negatively affect your whole of your race, okay? So I'll just jump forward straight to the technique that I'm trying to get you guys to think about, and then I'll break it down a little more. So to get that fast oncome of force, we want to hit the machine when we are broken at the hips. That's where we're most powerful. So I want to get that resistance really quick. Where it's different from the rower is you need to catch the rower early to build up the resistance, build up the power to get your hips into it. The difference on the SkiErg is that you can hit it almost straight away without having to go through a portion of the stroke to get that optimal portion. We can get this almost straight away from the SkiErg. So we're going to hit the SkiErg broken, okay? And that means that my hips are going to be broken and my heels are going to be on the floor. So I hit it broken. I want to drive down where I can get a good amount of resistance in the fan, and I don't want to stay with the resistance too much. I'm going to come up and recover. Okay, so I want to be hitting that powerful portion more often than hitting a less powerful portion less often. Okay, so I only want to be on the resistance for a short period of time, but more often, hitting that optimal range. Okay, so I catch, drive, recover, and then we just want to get into some flow. So as you can see there, I'm only using a small portion of the actual length available on the SkiErg. So this is how much length I've got available. Okay, I've got all the way to the top, all the way to the bottom. The trouble is, if I used all of that, I'm going to be under excessive amounts of stress, and my muscular fatigue will accentuate to the point where I will be detrimental for the rest of the Hyrox race. Okay? So, how do we break that down? Well, ultimately, the most powerful portion is when our hips are broken and we're getting our weight into the fan. Whoosh. Okay? So, to do that, we need to connect with the fan. Now, your arms are very important. Okay? Because if I want this connected to my hips, I wouldn't have the erg handles out here, because when I try to use my weight, all this movement arm here is just going to pull out of position. It's not going to transfer into my hips. Okay? So when we look at where your arms are, we want to make sure that they're pretty much at a right angle, not too far out, not too high, that we are connected with our hips, and it typically is around forehead height at a right angle. Okay? So you should be hitting it with your hips broken. When I say hit it, I mean catch the resistance with your hips broken and your arms at a right angle. From here, I can drive the fan down. Okay, get some speed into the fan, and now what I'm doing is I'm whoosh, and I can recover because the fan's going that fast. Okay, so we don't want the arms out here. We don't want to catch the resistance all the way out there. We want to catch the resistance relatively close to us, nice and connected with this lat. Okay? Another thing you don't want to do is you don't want to feel the fan in your elbow, i.e. your triceps. Okay? If I was to say you can only use your triceps, you are not going to give me much force whatsoever. Okay? So the tricep becomes obsolete in the SkiErg, because what happens is that when we hit the resistance, okay, we're going to get a little bit of a stretch in this lat, so we're going to drive down. Once we get to our optimal finish position, we are going to almost catapult this cord through to our pockets. Okay, so if you watch that motion slowly, I'm not actually catching any resistance in my elbow. Okay, so by the time I'm here, the cord's going that fast that I'm flicking it with my lat and falling through to my pockets. Not once have I felt any resistance in my triceps. So your triceps should never blow up. Okay? The next thing is you don't want to feel the resistance past a certain point. So once we get the drive, if we are continually staying with the resistance down here, that's what I'm talking about, that you are going to be under excessive exposure to stress in things like the quads, being in that isometric contraction down here, that you're just going to burn yourself out. So what we want to do is once we get to here, we are just going to flick and recover. So you've already generated the speed, that comes through, and you get your chest up, and you should finish in this position. So every time you complete a stroke, you see a stroke completed as your hands in your pockets. So I'll just get into some flow. So you'll notice I've stopped here. That's essentially all the drive. I flick to my pockets, okay? I'm gonna come back up. I'm gonna brake at the hips. Heels are gonna go down, okay? That's where I catch. I catch it very swiftly from here to here. I come on the resistance very quickly. I flick it through to my pockets. Now, the body works best when it finds rhythm and you can get into flow. Therefore, you can use momentum to help with your technique. So when I've done one stroke and I come up with my chest, what I'm going to do is I'm going to use the momentum of my chest coming up and my hips coming forward to pop up onto my toes, okay? So I'm not actively doing that. I'm using momentum to kind of pop, okay? It's important to get up onto your toes, that when we come down, we're coming down and we're hitting the resistance gradually, but with a bit of a dynamic start. So we might start the resistance here, and by the time our hips and heels have hit the floor, now we feel the peak force of the fan, okay? It's not gonna get any better from there. So what we need to do is flick it through, okay? So we go up, hips come forward, pop onto your toes. I've done that with momentum. We use a dynamic start. My heels hit. I drive down, I flick. My chest pops up, my hips pop forward. And you want to get into flow and make a rhythmic technique that's going to save you energy. Okay, so hopefully I've described the technique. I've described why it's important to just look at hitting the optimum range more often, not staying with the cord too long, not using things like the triceps, and using rhythm, okay? Related it to the force curve. The next thing we need to talk about is the actual fan, okay? So this machine measures how much air is going through the machine, and then the machine makes a calculation based on how fast you get through that resistance over how long. So if we have the damper all the way up to 10, which will equate to a drag factor, okay, it means that we have the potential to create more power, but it's going to cost us more energy to get through the resistance fast. So I can still get through it relatively slow, and I'm not going to make much power. It's not going to cost me much energy, but in terms of knocking off a metric such as a meter, it's not a great formula. Now, if I'm tired and I've got the damper too high, what's going to happen is it's going to take me a long time to get through it. It's going to cost me a lot of energy again. So if I get through it and I'm looking like this, I'm ultimately under stress for a long time, and as I get tired, that's a bad equation for you for efficiency. So what I would encourage most to do is to come off the drag factor, okay? So that when you get tired, you can still whoosh through that resistance optimally, and you get good recovery time. So when we look at what that might look like, well, my 2,000 meter world record was done at 110, which is around about a number 7 on a new machine. So for Hyrox, I would recommend for gents no more than 100 to 120. So that might look like 6 to 8 on a machine. And ladies, you want to be around 80 to 100, so that might look like 4 to 6 on a machine. And I'll stress the importance of not going too heavy is that as you get tired, you will have to be on the resistance longer to get through a stroke. It's going to cost you more energy. So you're better off coming off the drag factor, whipping through that resistance quicker and getting more recovery time. So that takes us on to stroke rate. Now, stroke rate can be indicative of your technique. If it's too low, it's probably saying that you're spending too long with the fan. So if you're in the 30s, it means that you're spending too long with the fan and you're not doing enough strokes. So therefore, those 30 will cost you a lot of time under tension. It's going to equal fatigue, inefficient, okay? If you're too high, you're probably going to be too frantic. You might even have the drag factor too low. It's going to cost you more energy trying to get that resistance because you have to push it even harder. So an optimal drag factor, you want to be, men and women, you want to be in the 40s, okay? Somewhere from 40 to around 46 would be optimum. That means that it's a nice cadence that you're able to get 1 breath per stroke. You can get through the resistance, but you can also get some breathing and recovery time. If it was too high, you would be constantly on that resistance. You wouldn't have any time to breathe. And if it was too low, you're going to get too much muscular fatigue, staying with the fan for too long. So a 40 SPM or a 42 SPM looks a little bit like this. Okay, so that was 42 SPM. I was holding a 140. Now, on pacing, we want to be going around 10K pace. Now, that's only relevant if you know your 10K pace. Another way you can do that is by using your 2K pace, adding 10 splits. So your 2K pace is basically what you can do for 2K divided by 4 equals your 500. So if you had a 6-minute 2K, that means you can go 145 per 500. You add 10 seconds onto that, that means you go at 155. That means that your 10K pace is around a 155, okay? If you don't know these metrics, you haven't got a 10K, or you don't know your 2K, the next thing you'll do is just work according to how you feel. You've obviously already done a 1K lap. You come in, you'll very unlikely be able to do anything beyond a sprint, okay? So you want to get into cadence, you want to use rhythm, you want to be in the 40s. You get good breathing, good stroke, good connection with the machine. By the time you've got off the machine, your technique should have been good enough that you won't feel anything in your quads because it's mostly been hip and body weight. You've not stayed with the core too long and used your quads, and you haven't burnt out your triceps because you've been doing that technique where you whip through. And as I say, the triceps shouldn't be burnt out. So that concludes the portion on the SkiErg. It's a fantastic machine. Concept 2 do a fantastic job with the monitor, the tracking, the world records, the indoor fitness races. That's why Hyrox, CrossFit, all machines like that use the Concept 2s because they're so reliable and they give you so much value with their objective data. If you want to know more, I work with people in Hyrox, in indoor rowing, online. I can work with you on an individual basis. You become an online client of mine. We meet, have video sessions, and I get your SkiErg and RowErg right up to where they need to be. I can program you to help you get more efficient and more effective on these things alongside strength training, which is going to help your efficiency. And also you can book an hour's Zoom with me so I can review your technique and help you get better for whichever races you want to do. All these links can be found on my Instagram at hallstrength, at hall_strength, or my website www.hallstrength.com. I hope you've enjoyed this portion on the SkiErg. If you've got any questions, please feel free to DM me. Good luck.